Hey guys, welcome back to Sparkman Homestead. My name is Krista, and I thought it would be really cool to do another kind of what we eat in a week video. Just kind of doing like just some of our meals that we have. Now, today is a really hot day. I think it is actually like 87 outside, Steven said. So it's hot. I've been in the garden most of the morning getting my garden, like my corn put in. So I'm wanting to have something that is kind of quick and that doesn't require a lot of like oven heat, because when you put the oven on, it tends to heat the whole house up. So tonight's meal, I took some chicken breasts out of the freezer and I am going to make my version of like a chicken Alfredo. This is something that I used to make for my kids all the time, and it was like my go-to. We would have this at least once a week. There are some ways to make this meal a lot more frugal and more on like budget friendly than how I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna make everything from scratch, but I will tell you when I am making it what you can actually sub for like those pre-made packages, or even if you can get it in a can. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna start with getting our chicken all sauteed and cooked, because the way that I make this dish is I just individually cook all of the components and then I just throw it together in a really big bowl, and then we have that. Now that usually ends up lasting at least a couple of days. We get a good meal out of it, like a good supper out of it, and then I can usually run it in for lunches, and even if we're busy the next day, it even might get us through for that supper. Let's get started with getting those chicken breasts all sauteed up. I have about a little over 1 pound of diced up chicken breasts here. I just diced them up into 1-inch cubes, just an easy like bite-sized piece. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm just gonna get these chicken breasts seasoned. I am going to use a little bit of garlic powder, and I'm just doing this in a separate bowl just so that I can make sure I get the seasoning kind of on all of them. So probably I'm using about half a teaspoon of garlic powder, and I'm gonna use about the same amount of onion powder. You can kind of just eyeball this and just to whatever you think your family would like. And Stephen thought it would be a good idea to season these with a little bit of lemon pepper seasoning. So we're gonna add a little bit of that. This is just some lemon pepper that I made. I think I found the recipe on Pinterest. So I'm probably gonna add about a teaspoon of this homemade seasoning. And then we're gonna add probably about maybe half a teaspoon of salt, and then we're just gonna get this stirred up. I'm gonna get my element turned on to about a medium, and then I'm gonna add probably about a tablespoon of avocado oil to the skillet, stirring the chicken breasts up so that the seasoning kind of gets on all of the chicken breasts. The other thing that I have going here in the background is I have a pot of water. I'm gonna get that boiling, and then I'm going to add our pasta to this. Once this oil is hot, I'm gonna add these chicken breasts, and we're just going to cook them completely. The skillet got nice and hot, so I added the chicken there. We're gonna completely cook that chicken through, because again, we're doing everything separate in this, so we wanna make sure that that chicken is, again, cooked all the way through. Now, I have the pot of water boiling in the background because we're going to make our pasta. For this, I like to use a bow tie pasta, but you can really use whatever pasta you have available. You could even interchange different types of pasta. This recipe is literally just a kind of a dump recipe. And by dump recipe, I just mean it's using what you have available to use. I made this recipe when my kids were younger, and I just had a whole bunch of stuff in the pantry that I needed to get used up, and so I just kind of cooked them all separately and just threw them in a bowl and called it Alfredo. So again, you can use whatever you would like for this. The other thing that we are going to use in this recipe, and it is because they were actually starting to go to seed, we are going to use some broccoli that I picked this morning from our garden. You can use frozen broccoli in this. You don't even necessarily need to use broccoli. You could use whatever type of vegetable you have available. I'm sure like green beans would be delicious in this also. So anything that you have available should work. I was thinking that asparagus would also taste very delicious in this recipe. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this broccoli cut up while that chicken is cooking and I'm waiting for the water to boil. And I'm gonna put this in a steamer basket and I'm gonna lightly steam this because again, we're cooking all of these elements by themselves. So let's get this cut up and put into the steamer basket. Our chicken is done. So I put our cut up broccoli, I just cut them up into like pieces like that, put them in our steamer basket, and we're gonna put this in and lightly steam these. We have our pasta going back here. So now all we have to do is get our Alfredo sauce made. When I used to make this, I used to use like a seasoning packet. They make these seasoning packets. This is just a brown gravy one, but they do make these ones in like Alfredo and like a garlic Alfredo. I used to use these for an extremely quick meal. But I actually have some milk that I need to get used up, so I am going to make our Alfredo sauce from scratch tonight. But again, if you don't want to make it from scratch, these packets are really quick and easy, and sometimes, depending, you can get these pretty cheap, pretty budget friendly to make a really quick meal. So that is one way that you can kind of make this meal a little bit more quicker and more budget friendly. Our pasta is pretty much done. I'm gonna get it strained, and what I'm gonna do is just add it to a really big mixing bowl because we put all of the components in there and then we'll just mix them all together. I want to show you guys, this is the pasta that I am using tonight. It is a gluten-free. This stuff is so good. I get these from Azure Standard, but again, you can use any pasta you'd like. So I'm just gonna get them strained and then again, add it to this bowl. And then this is our cooked chicken. I'm just gonna add this to here also. And then we have our steamed broccoli. We'll just add that here also. And then we're just gonna leave this like this, and then we're gonna get our Alfredo sauce made. I leave the Alfredo sauce to the last minute because it really only takes a couple of minutes to make, and I like to have it nice and hot when I put it on top of all of this stuff. So let's get that started. I am using a recipe from this cookbook, Joy of Cooking. It is on page 327, and it is just the fettuccine Alfredo recipe. I've tweaked it a little bit. Instead of using heavy cream, I just use a regular whole milk. It does have a pretty thick cream in it because it is a raw milk. So when you use regular milk instead of a heavy cream, is the sauce does not get as thick as it would with the heavy cream. Heavy cream really thickens up a sauce. So my sauce tends to be a little bit more of a runnier Alfredo sauce, but it still tastes delicious. So I'm fine with that. So instead of the heavy cream, I am subbing it for a whole milk. But again, it does have a pretty thick cream line on it. We're gonna get this Alfredo sauce started. In this pot here, I have half a cup or 1 stick of butter melted. We're gonna whisk in 1 cup, it says heavy whipping cream or heavy cream, but we're gonna use 1 cup of whole milk. So we'll add that in. And then we're also going to add 1 cup of grated Parmesan cheese. This is freshly grated Parmesan cheese. You can use, and I normally actually do use that kind that comes, you know, in the green container. I think it's Kraft that makes it. I buy mine from Azure Standard, but Kraft does make a version of it. So we're just gonna get this whisked together. And this will slowly start to thicken up. You want that cheese to melt also. One thing that I kind of go away from the recipe is I like to add a little bit of minced garlic to mine. Because this recipe is kind of a garlic Alfredo, that's how I like it, we're gonna add probably about a teaspoon of minced garlic to this. We're also going to add probably about half a teaspoon of black pepper. You don't need to add that much. We like peppery Alfredo sauce, that's why I add that much. And then I would say probably about half a cup of salt. That is all you need to do to make Alfredo sauce. It is so easy to make from scratch. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let that come to a boil, let it boil for a little bit until it starts to thicken up a bit. And once it's thickened up, then we will pour it over top of our other, bowl of goodies that we have here. So my sauce is pretty thin. You can leave it thicken up for a bit, and if you are using like the packaged one, you're gonna get a lot thicker of a sauce, but this is fine this thin. It will coat it nicely, and this does actually thicken up as it cools down. We're just gonna stir to coat. Make sure everything is good and coated in it. So another thing that I like to season this with is a little bit of Italian seasoning. This is just like the herb blend of Italian seasoning. It's not like the seasoning mix. So I just like to sprinkle it on top, and then I just stir it in a little bit. And that is all done. You could even use like the canned Alfredo in here. I have done that in the past. It works super good. Any type of Alfredo sauce will work really good in this. So that is tonight's meal. It's a super, super quick meal, and it is delicious. Like, this is one of my favorite meals. So I'm looking forward to it tonight. So I will see you on the next meal. Hey guys, welcome back for night 2 of kind of what's for dinner. Tonight I found a recipe on Pinterest that looked really good, and I thought I would try it for supper tonight. It is called taco lasagna. I just need to get my apron on. Just finishing up getting some canning done. I had some chicken broth that I needed to get canned up, so that is all finishing up. So if you hear that in the background, that's just what that is. So this recipe looked really quick and easy. I did have to make up a batch of refried beans first though. Refried beans are really, really easy to make. All as I did to make those was I just took a can of pinto beans, put some lard in my frying pan. You can, if you want onions, you can fry up some onions before you add anything else, but I omitted the onions. So I just added a can of pinto beans to that melted lard, and then I put in some garlic cloves, like some minced garlic. I put in a couple teaspoons, actually probably, because I only used 1 can of pinto beans, I put in 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of paprika, a little bit of pepper, and I think that was it. And then I just fry it all up, and then I mashed it with a potato masher, and that is refried beans. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna get some hamburger browned up. I'm gonna add a couple other things in this recipe that are optional. You do not have to add these if your family does not like them. We love black beans and we love diced tomatoes. So I'm going to be adding this to it, but this is a complete optional thing. You do not need to do this. So first, let's get that ground beef all browned up. So we're just waiting for the taco meat to finish up browning. I just kind of wanted to read over some of the things that are completely optional to add into this. You can add chopped onions, you can add bell peppers, you can add minced garlic. All of that would go in at the point that you are browning the beef up. The other thing I want to add is you can use ground chicken, you can use ground turkey. You do not need to use ground beef for this. In fact, you could probably even omit the ground beef and just use like a black bean with this and make this a completely vegetarian dish. That would probably be really good too. And it does state here that you can use a 1 14-ounce can of Mexican diced tomatoes. I don't have those. We're just going to use our regular diced tomatoes. And it says 1 15-ounce can of black beans, which we have drained and rinsed, which it does say to do in here. So we have that already done. So what we're going to do is once this is completely finished browning up, we are going to add our taco seasoning. Now this recipe says to add 2/3 cup of water and 1 packet of taco seasoning, and then cook that for 5 minutes, and then add your additional things that you want to add, like your tomatoes and your black beans. So I'm going to use some of my homemade taco seasoning mix that I made. I can actually leave a link for that video either up here or in the description for you guys. 1 packet of my taco seasoning, 1 packet equals, I believe it's 3 tablespoons. So that's what I'm going to be adding to this mixture. We also have the oven preheated at 350 degrees, and I have a 9x13 dish, and I actually need to get this greased. So I am going to just add a little bit of avocado oil to the bottom of this and get this greased up. So we're gonna let this simmer for about 5 minutes, and then we're gonna add in our tomatoes and our, black beans. Actually, I'm gonna go and add them right now because these tomatoes do have a little bit of liquid in them. I did pour off some of it, but they do have quite a bit left, and I want some of that liquid to evaporate. So I'm just gonna add my tomatoes right now. I'm gonna add my black beans so they get some of that flavor too. So now we'll simmer this for 5 minutes. So the beef mixture I actually had to end up cooking for about 15 minutes because those tomatoes had a lot of liquid. So I wanted to get some of that liquid off. So it took about 15 minutes to get to this consistency. So I'm gonna use some tortillas. I'm just using these ones, just these white wheat ones that I picked up from Azure Standard. So now we are going to assemble our lasagna. So what it says to do is to place 2 tortillas on the bottom of the dish, kind of like this. So then it says to take half of our refried beans. I just made one recipe of this. Actually, I halved the recipe, but it does say a 16-ounce can of refried beans. It also mentions that in order to make them spread smoother, you can heat them up in the microwave, and that works well as also. So we're just going to spread them, and I actually might heat them up because they're not spreading really easy. This might be different if you're using like a smoother canned refried beans. Again, I just made these and just mashed them with my potato masher, so they're a little thicker. And now we're gonna take half of our beef mixture and put that on top of this. Then it says to take a heaping cup of cheddar cheese. We're just using a white cheddar cheese here, so we will just get that on top of here. And then it says to repeat. So we're gonna put 2 tortilla wraps down, and then we're gonna put the rest of our refried beans down. Try to smooth them. Then we'll add the rest of our meat. And then 1 more cup of cheese. So the recipe calls for 4 cups of cheese in total, and I only had probably about 2 cups. I have this shredded cheese, so I'm just gonna add a little bit of this to this. And then we have to add 2 more tortillas to the top of this, and then it says top with the remaining cheese, so that would be about 2 cups of cheese. So we'll put this on top. So we got it covered with foil. So now what we have to do is we need to put it into the oven for, what does it say, 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, we need to come back, take the foil off, and then cook it for an additional 10 minutes. So let's get this put into the oven. Get this taken out and get the foil taken off of it. The timer went off, but I actually turned the oven off and I switched it on to broil, and I have it sitting right now underneath a high broil. I think it's done, so let's pull it out and take a look. I just kind of wanted to get the cheese a little bit bubbly on the top and nice and browned. Well, I'm definitely pleased with how that looks, and based on how it's bubbling, I'm gonna give it a minute or 2 just to cool down before we cut into it and try to eat it, because I think it's a little hot. So a couple of things that I made for the toppings is I just shredded up some of our garden lettuce. We have some black olives here, some of this Nancy's sour cream, best sour cream ever, and then some of this green sauce to go on top. Trying to get this in so it can focus. That is what it looks like. That's my plate. So that is tonight's supper, and it smells delicious, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. I think this recipe is going to be a hit. So I will see you guys on the next dinner. Hey guys, welcome back to meal number 3. Tonight we are going to do something with some ground chicken. We are actually processing our meat birds. We process all of our poultry here on our homestead, and we are doing that this weekend. So I need to kind of clear the freezer a little bit of our chicken products. So tonight's supper, we are going to have what's called a 20-minute honey sriracha ground chicken and broccoli. It's kind of like an Asian dish that you just put over top of rice. So I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to get that ground chicken used up. And then plus we also have some broccoli that I harvested out of the garden again this morning. Because we are starting to get warmer here where we live, I am in southern Kentucky, just about 45 minutes north of Nashville. So our days are definitely consistently getting to be in the 80s right now. So all of my broccoli is wanting to go to seed. So I'm having to kind of go out there in the morning and just assess it. And if it looks like it is like near that point, I actually harvest it. So this morning I harvested a whole bunch of broccoli. So I thought this recipe would also be perfect to get that used up as well. It looks like it is a very, very quick to come together meal. There is one thing in the recipe that I actually do not have, and I really honestly do not feel like going to the store to grab it. So I did some research on Pinterest and I found a really quick, easy recipe to make this. And what it is just a sweet chili sauce. So if you guys already have a sweet chili sauce in your pantry, or if you are kind of going to be planning a meal ahead, you don't have to make this from scratch. It is definitely available in most grocery stores, but I like to make everything from scratch because then I know what's in it. And plus I learned that new skill of making that if I ever need to make it again in the future. So I thought I would show you guys how I'm going to make that chili sauce that we're going to get incorporated into our meal tonight. I have a medium saucepan here on my stovetop, and I'm going to be adding 1/3 cup of rice vinegar. I'm just going to be using this stuff in it. I will leave this recipe linked below for you guys as well. Then we're going to add 1/3 cup of white sugar. This is just an organic evaporated cane sugar. I have seen a couple of recipes on Pinterest that actually say you can use a sugar substitute in this. So if you have like alternative substitute that you use, you can definitely use this in here. And then you need 1/3 cup of water, but you have to have it divided by 2 because you need to use half of it here, and then the other half we're gonna make a cornstarch slurry with it. So I have 1/3 cup in here, so I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it and empty out what looks to be like half of it. And then we're going to use about a tablespoon of this stuff. Now it does say that you can, my tablespoon doesn't fit in here. Find a different one. There we go. It does say that you can do this to taste. So if you don't like too much of a heat, then don't put as much in. I love like the heat of this stuff. This stuff is so good. So I'm gonna put the full tablespoon in here. Getting that mixed up, and I just turned my element on to about a medium. I don't want the sugar to burn, but we need to bring this to a boil and get all of that sugar dissolved. So to this bowl, I added 2 teaspoons of cornstarch and the other half of that 1/3 of that water. And I just whisked this up until we have like a nice smooth consistency. Once this comes to a boil, what we're gonna do is we are going to quickly whisk in that cornstarch mixture, and then we're gonna cook it until it's nice and thick. I am going in and occasionally stirring this because I do not want that sugar to stick to the bottom of the pot. So that is to a boil now. I'm just gonna get this stirred a little bit. Then we're gonna whisk this in. You can see it is already starting to thicken up quite a bit. So I turned the heat off and I took that off the heat. It literally came together right away. I didn't need to really let it cook for very long. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna let this, I'm gonna put a lid on it and just let this cool on my stovetop. It is only not even 2:30 yet, so we're obviously not gonna have supper yet. One thing I also pre-prepped was I did get some rice made. I just made up like a brown rice. You can use, if you are really in a hurry and you have minute rice, you can definitely use minute rice in this. I just wanted to go ahead and pre-make my brown rice because it does take about an hour to make. So that is all done. We've got this all done. So tonight when it comes to making supper, we just literally have to throw everything together and then we will have a delicious supper. Okay, it's time to get supper all assembled now. It is about 6:30, so it's definitely dinner time. So this meal comes together like really quick. What we have to do is on the stovetop right now, I have a medium-sized skillet. I'm gonna add about a half a tablespoon of avocado oil to this, and I'm just going to lightly sear some broccoli. The recipe says that you want to leave the broccoli untouched for 1 to 2 minutes for it to develop some browning on the sides. And then what you need to do is you need to continue to cook the broccoli until it is dark green, about 3 to 4 minutes. And then once that is done, we're gonna take that and transfer it to a plate. Just have some hot water going in the background here. I'm blanching the rest of my broccoli and getting it in the freezer so it doesn't go to waste. It would help if I had the skillet on. Okay, let's get that hot. Okay, I think that oil's hot now, so we're just gonna add this. And then again, we're gonna let it cook for 1 to 2 minutes and then check and see if it is browning and then cook it for an additional 3 to 4 minutes. You can see how it's getting crispy. We're gonna let it continue to do that for about 3 to 4 minutes. I'm saying that this is looking pretty good. I don't want to completely char it to death, so I'm going to take this off and transfer it to a plate. We're going to add another half a tablespoon of not olive oil. You can use olive oil. The recipe actually calls for olive oil, but we're using avocado. We're going to add 1 pound of ground chicken. So while the chicken is browning up, we have to get the sauce made that's gonna go on top of it as soon as it is browned up. To a small bowl, we are going to add a 1/4 cup of this sweet chili sauce. This is the stuff that we just made. And I do have more than I need, so I'm gonna just put this in a mason jar and just leave it in the fridge. It will stay fresh in the fridge, so that's perfect. I am trying to find a recipe right now, like a canning recipe, for this stuff. And then we need to add 2 tablespoons of honey. Now I just tasted some of this sweet chili sauce that we just made and it has got some good kick to it. So this recipe says to add 2 to 3 tablespoons of Sriracha to what you desire. So let's start with 2 tablespoons of this. You know what, I think this is a brand new thing. It is. Let me take this off first. So we'll add 2 tablespoons to this. If we want to add a little bit more, we can add it to the top of our meal. I just don't want to make it too spicy. And then we need to add 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. I'm just going to use this stuff. You could definitely use like liquid aminos or coconut aminos, whatever you have. And then we need a tablespoon of toasted sesame oil. I'm going to use this stuff. I just had to quickly stir that chicken because I don't want it to get burnt. So I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of garlic powder to this sauce, and then 1 teaspoon of ground ginger. I'll get this whisked together. So that chicken is all cooked up. So what we have to do now is we need to add the sauce. It says in capital letters, "Do not burn." I'm sure that you could also use like a ground turkey in this. So we've got to just let this sit until the sauce thickens and then we add the broccoli back to it. Sauce looks like it's nice and thick now. So we're gonna add the broccoli back. Just stir it all in. Get the broccoli nice and coated with the sauce. I'm gonna add a little bit of sesame seeds. It does say to garnish with them. I'm just gonna add a little bit to the actual mixture. So that is quick and easy. That is already done. Like I was saying, my battery actually died, so I don't know how much of it actually picked it up, but you would probably be able to sub ground turkey in for this, and if you didn't have either of them and the only thing you had was ground beef, I'm sure you could definitely use that as well. It would just probably be a little bit more fatty, so you probably could omit the olive oil or the avocado oil in this. So it does say you can garnish it with some green onions also. We're obviously gonna leave those out, but that is it. So you just serve that with rice and that is your meal. Super quick, super easy, and that is definitely, in my opinion, for me, that's budget friendly because the broccoli I had to get used up and the chicken I had to get used up. So that is tonight's meal.
Well, I am editing this video and I completely realized I forgot to say goodbye to you guys at the end of last night's meal. I was really excited about that meal and it actually turned out amazing. Steven said to me that it should be going into our regular meal rotations. It was really, really good. The one thing though is it was really spicy. We definitely did not need to add any sriracha to the top of it, and I'm glad that I only ended up putting the 2 tablespoons in because that Thai chili sauce was nice and spicy, which made the dish taste really good. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you a little bit of inspiration for maybe some meals that you can make for your family or for yourself. They all turned out amazing. I hope you guys have a great day or night whenever you're watching this, and I will see you on the next video. Bye guys.